evening, everyone. We're going to start tonight's event with a video provided by the TEDx organization.
Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to TEDx Westchester University. My name is Jessica Sullivan-Brown, and I'm a member of the biology faculty here at WCU, and I'm one of the organizers behind tonight's event. We are so grateful to have you all here tonight. Students, faculty, staff, community members, artists, scientists, lifelong learners, coming together in a shared space that celebrates curiosity, creativity, and connection. This year's TEDx theme invites us to deepen our appreciation of the natural world, explore how science can strengthen human connection, and discover how performance and artistic expression can transform complex ideas into experiences that are accessible, engaging, and profoundly human. But importantly, tonight is about community. It's about a time to pause and listen and be present with one another. It's about approaching ideas with kindness and openness. Because when we create spaces where people feel seen, valued, and heard, I hope we can begin to open the doors for meaningful change. Before we begin, I'd like to take a moment to recognize the many individuals who have made tonight possible. To my knowledge, this is the first video recorded TEDx event at Westchester University, so thank you everybody so much for your work on this. I'd like to send a heartfelt thank you to WCU alum Alex Gianaris, who helped inspire this entire event. Alex, could you come out for a moment? So I still remember, oh, can you come? Thanks. Oh, okay. Oh, wow, I'm not used to holding a mic. I still remember when Alex first came to my office thinking about this idea of a TEDx event, one that merged the sciences and the arts together. I don't have a background in theater, but Alex does, and I thought this is such a fantastic event. So I really wanted to take a moment and thank you for your vision and your passion and your creativity for really having a space for this intersection between science and the arts. So thank you so much, Alex. Alex is actually super busy tonight because she's our stage manager, but thank you so much for coming out. And of course, bringing an event like this to life involves a community. This event was sponsored by the College of Science and Mathematics by the Student and Community Engagement Award. We are grateful to our dean, Dr. Jessica O'Shaughnessy, and to the staff from the College of the Science and Mathematics, especially Bridget Fitzgerald, Rebecca Grzillo, and Genesis Rubio for their leadership, coordination, and support. We also extend our sincere thanks to all members of the production team, especially two members that are here tonight, Dan Kadushin and Joshua Browns. You can't see them, but they can see us. We really appreciate them for their expertise in stage management, for lighting, audio, and design, and for teaching me, a biologist, an entirely new language of event production. In a moment, I'm going to introduce our MCs for tonight, including Dr. Thomas Kwiatkowski and Dr. Avi Ganis, whose contributions will certainly make tonight more meaningful. And to our many faculty and student volunteers, this is a really busy time of the semester, so thank you so much for all the work you have put into this, and especially our faculty advisor for the production team, Dr. Sarah Howden-Levin. And of course, to our incredible speakers, thank you so much for your time and your courage to share your stories with us. Before we start, our dean will be offering a few welcoming remarks as well.
Good evening. I'm Jessica O'Shaughnessy. I serve as the Dean of the College of the Sciences and Mathematics. First, I want to thank Dr. Sullivan Brown for all the work she has done in organizing this event. I'm excited we have the opportunity to hear from our speakers today, and the College of the Sciences and Mathematics is thrilled to host this event. I've been at Westchester for 2 years, and I still feel new to Westchester, but during my time here, I've learned so much about the many things that make us a great place. I think of our college as broken into 3 main areas: the social sciences, the computational sciences, and the natural or lab sciences. We have a lot of strengths, and I think of our biggest strengths as having amazing faculty who provide an excellent education for our students, providing experiential learning opportunities for our students, such as research experiences or events like this one, and building a sense of community among our faculty, staff, and students. This event is an excellent example of the things we do so well, and I'm grateful to the many individuals who organized this event. This event came out of a fund where faculty can apply to engage with our community. We reworked this fund 2 years ago to support community engagement work that is happening in our college. As a college, we provide amazing learning opportunities for students. As scientists of different types, one main thing we have in common is to question the world around us. We were trained through our education to dive deeply into questions. These form the basis of our theses or papers our students are working on, or publications our faculty are working on. Having an event that discusses the world around us and connects the sciences to other fields such as the arts is critical to advancing knowledge and understanding and seeking solutions to challenges in our world. We are always seeking meaning in the world around us, and that meaning comes from the intersection of many fields. One of our key values as a college is building community. Building community allows us to open the doors of learning for more people, whether that is in the classroom or through events. We strive to create a sense of belonging for students, faculty, staff, and support for our broader community. This event highlights that value and allows us the opportunity to come together as a community and share knowledge. It's exciting to see our list of speakers, who include students, faculty, community members, and colleagues from other institutions. Building collaborative relationships makes us stronger and makes our work more fulfilling. Thank you to everyone who came out for the event today and the many individuals who made this event happen, including our hosts, speakers, administrative staff, and faculty. I'm excited to learn more from our speakers. I'll hand it back to Jessica.
Thank you so much to the Dean. So now we're ready to start. So tonight we invite you to lean in and to listen deeply and to let your imagination expand. I will now invite Dr. Thomas Kwiatkowski, Assistant Professor of Chemistry, to present our first speaker.
All right, everyone. Well, welcome. So our first speaker tonight is Dr. Jessica Turner-Skoff. She is the Associate Director of Science Communications at Longwood Gardens. Jessica is an internationally recognized, award-winning science communicator whose work focuses on helping people connect with the natural world. With a background in conservation biology, experience in leading institutions like the Morton Arboretum and Phipps Conservatory, She now helps translate science and conservation into stories that inspire people everywhere. In her talk, The Space That Saves Us, Jessica explores how reconnecting with nature and the space that brings us back to it can help restore the sense of community, well-being, and humanity. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Jessica Turner-Skoff.
Thank you. There were two moments in my life where I felt truly alone. The first was in the mountains of Alaska at a research site so remote that when my team drove off, the vastness in the frigid gray sky just seemed to envelop me. With every step that I took, I realized I might be one of the very few people to ever stand exactly where I was standing. What an indescribable emotional weight, sacred even. It's not every day you can feel so connected to life, yet be truly alone in both space and in time. The second was after I started graduate school. Thanks to my apartment and classes and the gym, I was constantly in the presence of other people. However, for other reasons, this was a period of my life marked by pain and loneliness. It felt like there was a canyon between me and the rest of the world. I felt so disconnected. This is the period of my life where I felt truly alone. That juxtaposition taught me that the loneliest place in the world, it isn't the wilderness. It's the space created when we lose connection between ourselves, others, and the natural world. According to the American Psychological Association, we are currently in a crisis of connection. Around 80% of all Americans live in urban areas surrounded by people, and yet over half of all US adults report feeling isolated. Our brains are wired for connection, and yet our increasingly digital and built lives reward independence. In treating ourselves as separate, we're denying something fundamental about who we are. Today, we're not going to talk about the crisis. Instead, let's talk about a potential solution. Throughout human history, there have been three, let's call them forces, that have shaped our capacity for connection and belonging: nature, curiosity, and beauty. These three forces, when working together, help us answer very human questions. Who am I? What does this mean? What should I do next? When we can answer those questions, we have a compass to understand how we relate to others and the living world, and therefore we can address the crisis of connection. As such, nature is the foundational force behind connection. Whether you believe we came from dust from the earth or from the stars, we are made up of nature and we need it in our lives. Of course, many people and many cultures around the world absolutely embrace and value nature, but in the United States, only 1/3 of our adults spend over an hour outside each day. Our views from our homes and offices are increasingly of concrete and asphalt, with a dwindling number of species. We were never meant to live this way. It's having a profound impact on our health, and the international medical community acknowledges this. That's why, throughout North America, you can get prescriptions written to encourage you to go to parks. In South Korea, they have therapy forests. In a paper that I co-wrote with Dr. Nicole Cavender, which cited well over 100 studies, we make the case that having healthy, mature trees in your community can improve physical, mental, and social well-being. Nature is the context in which our bodies and minds were forged, and it still grounds us in belonging today. That brings us to curiosity. Now, curiosity is a basic human drive, like hunger or thirst, and it pushes us to seek what we do not yet know. Our brains crave novelty and discovery, and when we can engage in those actions, we can be rewarded with a flood of feel-good hormones. Seneca the Younger, the Roman Stoic philosopher best known for his teachings on how to live a meaningful life, captured the essence of curiosity when he said, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." When we follow our curiosity, we don't just learn more, we feel more, we connect more. Science, the process of understanding how the world works, is that impulse at scale. Science is simply curiosity made systematic. We want to understand order and relationships, and when we do, we can appreciate the differences and celebrate the collective, connection. The third force is beauty. From the earliest cave paintings, tools, and jewelry to architecture, it's never been just about function. Humans have always made a space for beauty. What's interesting is that we did this when resources were scarce, danger was constant, and survival demanded efficiency. Why did we still make things beautiful when there were far more productive ways to spend our time? Beauty is a language. It's a shared language that helps us communicate and therefore connect. While not all art is beautiful, beauty is often part of the experience it can create. Dr. Mae Jemison, the astronaut, said in her own TED Talk, "Science provides an understanding of a universal experience. Art provides a universal understanding of a personal experience. Therefore, art and science together, beauty and curiosity, it creates a bridge between the personal and the universal. When we learn something new or find a new way to feel, we try to capture it and share it." An ancient carved pattern from South Africa provides insight into our origins and what we find beautiful. It's simple. We don't know why they carved it, but to me, it tells a larger story. Beauty often emerges from the same environmental cues that shape life itself. Symmetry signifies stability. Balanced systems tend to persist. Proportions that feel harmonious reflect efficiency. Beauty is not a luxury. Beauty is simply the byproduct of solutions that work. And when we are around beauty, we can feel safer. We can feel more inspired, more whole. In fact, throughout human history, people have recognized nature's solutions so frequently that an entire tradition emerged to describe them: sacred geometry. Our early attempt to make order of what we saw in shells to leaves to stars. Nature, curiosity, and beauty. If these three forces are so important, then the real question becomes, where can we go where they are intentionally woven together? In this crisis of connection, where are these spaces that save us? One answer: public gardens. Now, a public garden is different than a park. Both are very important, but public gardens, they're all about plants. According to the American Public Gardens Association, in these spaces, plants are grown with purpose for education, enjoyment, conservation, research, higher learning. There's nearly 600 public gardens throughout North America. Around the world, according to Botanic Gardens Conservation International, there's over 3,000. And if you're just interested in tree-focused gardens, according to ARBNet, the International Arboretum Accreditation Program, there's nearly 900. Chances are you've been in one of these spaces before. And we all know the general feeling of when we're in a beautiful, cultivated space. But until we identify that feeling, assign it value, and say it out loud, it's not yet part of our shared story. Case in point, when my husband proposed to me, it was an early fall day. Change was in the air, as was the smell of rain. He got down on one knee, and just the words that he said, it was just magic. I took the ring, I enthusiastically put it on my finger, and as I kissed my man, I realized he looked really concerned. He nervously asks, "What's your answer?" Yeah, don't worry, it worked out. He's in the audience with our two boys. We're madly in love. I knew how I felt. I had assigned value to it, but I hadn't yet said it out loud, and therefore it wasn't part of our shared identity at that point. Intuitively, I believe we all know the power of public gardens, even if we couldn't say it before this talk. Around North America, over 132 million people visit public gardens annually. That's more than the attendance of the National Football League, Major League Baseball, National Basketball Association, Women's National Basketball Association, combined, with 16 million to spare, over 16 million. Let's speak about the power of public gardens and their ability to address this crisis of connection. I have my doctorate and over 13 years of experience in the public garden world, from Phipps Conservatory to the Morton Arboretum, to serving as a Chanticleer Scholar, to now working at Longwood Gardens. I am deeply passionate about these institutions, what they represent, what they bring to communities, and how they are saving the world. As such, as gardens are nonprofits, they have a responsibility to both make sure that everybody can come and enjoy their restorative places, but also that everyone knows that they are invited to enjoy these spaces. That's why many public gardens like Longwood offer discounted or free admission through access programs, partner organizations, or through libraries. If we truly want to address this crisis of connection, we need as many people as possible to enjoy these spaces. These forces move so strongly in a garden setting, and I believe one of the reasons comes down to horticulture, which is the art and science of growing plants. This is the bedrock of any garden, and wouldn't you know it, coded within that definition, you can find beauty, curiosity, and nature. Let's look at how these forces move individually in a garden setting. Nature is the palette of any garden. Gardens are one of the most beautiful manifestations of the relationship between people and nature. That's why the act of gardening itself can be so fulfilling. Gardens have existed for millennia as places where people have stewarded and cultivated the land with care. With the rise of formal gardens, people did harvest plants without discretion and oftentimes with little to no consideration for the people or landscapes that they were impacting. However, today the industry is confronting that past and reshaping itself, building on partnerships, respecting origins and traditional knowledge, and prioritizing conservation and restoration. The goal isn't to own nature, but to ensure it endures. One of the ways that we do this is through plant collections. Like an art museum collects art, we collect plants, and we maintain these collections with curators and databases and records, and we share them. Keep in mind, plants are responsible for all other life on this planet. Dr. Murphy Westwood led a paper where they make a case that gardens are a solution to the plant extinction crisis. Public gardens aren't just growing plants, we're safeguarding the future of plants, and therefore, we're safeguarding the future of humanity. That brings us to curiosity. Many public gardens are scientific powerhouses asking and answering some of the biggest questions of our time. At Longwood Gardens, we're asking questions like, how can we protect biodiversity where we live, work, and play? What kind of plants should we be growing, and how can we grow them to make sure they're around for the future? Public gardens have robust education programs for people of all ages. We have libraries, we have archives, and most importantly, we have people who are passionate about their expertise, and they want to connect with you and your curiosity. Now, I mentioned earlier that the brain loves new stimuli. Well, what is a garden if not a symphony for the senses? From water to light, colors to sounds, the smell of earth to the smell of flowers, from horticultural feats to native landscapes. There is something for everyone to experience at a garden and something new to discover beyond every turn. That brings us to beauty. Beauty is the identity of any garden, and gardens are not the only beautiful places, and they are not the only places that bring beauty and nature together. However, by design, they are a showcase of sacred geometry. And in gardens, you will experience symmetry, ratios, proportions, balance, biodiversity, all of nature's solutions that signal to us that we can feel safe and whole. Let's revisit that ancient carving from South Africa. As I was looking at this, I realized it looked so familiar. It's actually the same design as part of Longwood Gardens' fittingly named Idea Garden. What we find inspirational as people has distinct ties to our origins and the forces that shaped us. In this crisis of connection, we haven't lost our humanity. We've simply lost touch with the forces that shaped it. Public gardens offer a rare remedy by bringing together nature, curiosity, and beauty into one place. And when these are woven together like cords, they're stronger and more impactful. There's a reason why I know that public gardens can help us reconnect. As I hinted at earlier, there was no period of my life with as much uncertainty as my early 20s. For the better part of a decade, I lived in multiple states and multiple apartments. I sat with heartbreak. I experienced the deepest friendships and extreme joy, but I also felt profound isolation. Public gardens were how I would reconnect. I would visit Phipps Conservatory for its green futurism paired with old world elegance, Dawes Arboretum for its quiet paths through the deep woods, Franklin Park Conservatory as the first public garden I ever loved, Waimea Valley for its sheer abundance of unique life, and the U.S. Botanic Garden, a free oasis in the middle of a bustling city. I would visit these spaces. I would be alone, but never lonely. And by being in these places where curiosity and beauty were expressed through the palette of nature, I was able to solve my own crisis of connection. In periods of loneliness and isolation, I urge you to go intentionally to your community's public garden. Reconnect with yourself, others, and the living world through the powerful forces of nature, curiosity, and beauty. I'll leave you with one thought. Throughout cultures and religions and traditions representing a majority of the people alive today, our origin story as people did not begin in the wilderness, but instead, a garden. Thank you.
Sorry, some technical issues. Wow, what an excellent start. And what a great public speaker. It was like in awe. So up next, our next speaker is Dr. Maria Urrutia, professor of dance at Westchester University. Born in Cuba, Maria is a dancer, scholar, choreographer whose work draws deeply from the Cuban rumba traditions and the stories of women. She holds degrees from Goddard College, Temple University, the University of the Arts, and her performance and research has been presented across the United States and internationally. Her talk, Dance, Feminism, and the Swan Song, Maria invites us to rethink aging in dance and see the wisdom, resilience, and power carried within experienced bodies. Please welcome Dr. Maria Urrutia.
Thank you. The performing arts asks of society to look at something that reflects what we as humans often overlook or do not look at deeply enough. The performing arts, in particular dance, fills its stages with young bodies performing challenging feats of beauty. And when those young bodies age, they call in their swan song or their final dance. This could be because they're tired, injured, maybe there's no performative roles left for them. So what of those bodies that are not ready to call in their swan song, that still have power, resilience, and a desire to share something with society? They have something to say and not given the opportunity. As a performing artist of almost 28 plus years, I've had the privilege of collaborating with so many different individuals, creating my own work that covers my migratory story, the Mario boat lift from Cuba to the US, something that happened in the 1980s, and I lived and create my work surrounding the ideas of it due to political unrest, to Guggenheim Fellow Silvana Cardell and Cardell Dance Theater. I've had the privilege of working for Silvana and dancing and collaborating, and having Silvana bring into the room something that challenges both theoretically and physically my thinking. She is someone who explores the depth and makes the invisible body visible. Sometimes she'll walk into the studio and say, in this section, I see everyone floating. And then she'll always have a picture to accompany this floating. And because it's Silvana, you figure out how to float. In her work, Supper, People on the Move, which premiered at the Icebox Theater in 2015, she created a story that surrounded the ideas of migration, immigration, and people's will to survive. This work toured nationally and internationally and had at its backbone, like all her work, artistic integrity and depth and social political commentary. Supper is a work that I premiered at age 36 and toured nationally and internationally at age 40, a year after giving birth to my daughter Adeline. To most recent work, Terra, Bodies and Territories, a work that premiered at the Schuylkill Center for Environmental Education in 2025, 10 years after Supper. This work explores the ecofeminist idea, a term coined in the 1970s, where we look at the theories of how female bodies and nature are dominated by patriarchal society. Ecofeminism brings together nature and feminism, female bodies, searching for liberation. And so Bodies and Territories, Terra, is a work that holds at its core two groups of dancers. The core group of dancers that range from age 23 to 47, and an ensemble group of dancers that range from age 8 to age 70. The youngest in that group being my daughter, Adeline. But let me just say this, it was certainly not a gentle work. By no means gentle on the body or the mind. We did start in the regular studio space, but very quickly moved to the forest stage in March, where the grip of frigid winter was still at its tightest. There were days we would show up to the forest stage and that slanted slope was full of mud and sleek, and then other days the slanted slope had dust bowls, exposed rocks that weren't there the day before, and twigs and branches. It challenged my body and my mind in a way that I did not expect, and certainly brought into play these ideas of ecofeminism. I had to become one with nature. My physical thinking needed to come together in order to perform the feats that I needed to as a mother, a collaborator, artist, and performer. One of the greatest gifts in this work was actually performing with my daughter Adeline. And we would enter the space in a very playful manner into a section known by the core dancers called House. In this section, we walk into this house that's built around us by the women, creating spaces, female spaces, traditional activities, such as sweeping, braiding another woman's hair, eating. This is what Laura Mulvey talks about in Visual and Other Pleasures, right? The female space, the inside space, being one that is social, that is feminine. Now, the work does continue to evolve, and we know that inside spaces can also hold domestic violence. And that is demonstrated through the dancers towards the last section of this work. Then, to crystallize this piece and show the resilience of bodies, Silvana brings together this final image of Adeline and I standing on the boards that were built by the house, held by the women, and we're looking in the distance, and what she's saying is, so, what is next? And so I say to you, so what is next for this almost 48-year-old body? Certainly not a swan song. So I ask that this talk bring into mind the ideas that you can shift your aesthetics thinking, open spaces for aging bodies in dance, aging bodies in the world, because we have so much to give. We still have power, resilience, and our lived experience can certainly have you looking at something within society a little more deeply than you have before. Thank you.
Excellent. So our next speaker is Dr. David Dannenfelser, a lecturer in theater and communication at Rutgers University. David is a playwright, director, and educator whose work has been produced in venues including the Public Theater and the New York City International Fringe Festival. He's also the author of The Art of Effective Science Communication and has spent his career helping people communicate ideas through performance and storytelling. In his talk, The Power of Working in Role, David explores how stepping into a role can free people from fear and unlocking powerful ways to connect with an audience. So please welcome Dr. David Dannenfelser.
I am an introvert. Sorry. Might be overcompensating a little bit there. Sorry. Let me try again. I am an introvert, and I work in the theater. I know these things may seem to be at odds with each other, and sometimes they have been for me. But I have found a way to go beyond my introverted nature and to connect and to communicate. I do this through a process called working in role. Working in role involves role-taking, particularization, and the use of projective techniques. I'll be talking about those things today. I don't have any slides. It's just me. Hopefully that'll be enough as we talk about working in role. But first, I'd like to tell you a story. Many years ago, I was rehearsing a play that I had written for the New York City International Fringe Festival. And I was at this building downtown where they had a lot of spaces for that purpose. And so I was leaving rehearsal one night, and I got on the elevator, I think it was the 5th floor, and I'm about to push the button for the lobby when onto the elevator comes this very famous actor. And he had with him a companion, a woman I didn't know. So there we are, the three of us on the elevator, and we start our descent down to the lobby. We get about 2 floors down, and the elevator stops, and the doors open, and he steps out. And the woman stays on the elevator with me. So we're watching him, standing on the landing, looking around. And finally, he turns back to her, and he asks her, "Is this the floor?" Very famous. And she says, "No." And the doors close. And then she turns to me and she says, "That was so-and-so." As if to say, he does this all the time. And I thought to myself, this very talented, highly accomplished, award-winning actor, so-and-so, has issues. Well, we got down to the lobby, and we met him there after he had taken the stairs. And they went on their way without another word about it. One way or another, he had gotten to the right floor. He had gotten the job done. Now, I tell you this story today because it's related to my subject. That really famous actor has had a long and distinguished career. He also is just a guy with issues. He isn't perfect. He doesn't try to be. As a matter of fact, I think he uses those vulnerabilities and that very human quality to connect to the characters he plays, and also to us, his audience. He doesn't judge these characters, but rather he seeks to understand them, to empathize with their flaws as he does his own. This process of working in role may have implications for us as public speakers as well. There is a fundamental understanding in the work of an actor. My partner is the most important person on stage. My partner, not me. When I lift up another, I take the focus off myself. I also give myself a very specific task to take in and respond to my partner. This idea, this fundamental of acting, is important for the public speaker too. If I take the focus off myself, I am free to take in and respond to my audience. If I commit to that idea, my relationship with the audience is transformed. The audience, you, become my partner, not my judge. So let's go back to working in role. The first step is role taking. What does that mean? I'll describe it this way. Role taking is not about becoming someone other than yourself, but rather it's about discovering aspects of yourself you may not have considered before. It's about finding that public speaker in you and taking on that role and identifying what is required for it and seeing yourself in it. We play many roles in our lives. For myself, I am a teacher, a playwright, a public speaker. I am also a father, a son, a husband, and a brother. Can any of you tell me about roles that you play? I can't see you very well, but just give me. Professor, another one.
Runner.
What, runner? Beautiful. One more. One more. Singer. All of these roles require certain things from us. But when we play them, we are always still ourselves. The self, to paraphrase Walt Whitman, is large and contains multitudes. We bring ourselves to the roles we play, and we try to fulfill them to the best of our abilities, using the structure of the role to help us to do it. The roles we play are mediators between us and our experiences, like an elevator that gets us to the right floor. Callback. So, when an actor works in role, they study and develop character. They seek to understand a character, their hopes, their dreams, their desires, and to portray that character accurately and authentically. What a professor of mine once called playing the reality of the fiction. For public speakers, so too, it is true. We take on a role and we try to play it the best we can. And something that might help with that is this idea of particularization. Particularization starts with a series of questions the actor asks themselves in relation to the role they are playing. The character. How is this character like me? How are they different from me? What does this character want and from whom? And what does that mean to me? This is the beginning of what can be a very difficult process for the actor. If a character is so far away from anything in their understanding, it will be a challenge to play that person authentically. If you, or any of you, are an introvert like me, sharing a speech like this may have made you feel that way too. So how do we do that? How do we go forward? Well, something else, a next step, might be projective technique. Projective technique involves the use of uniforms, objects, and the role itself to help us to go beyond our own limitations, our apprehensions, and to gain particular access to the roles we play. Uniforms. In the medical school community, there is this ritual called the white coat ceremony. Perhaps some of you are familiar with that. Maybe not. Each student, after a period of study, reaches a milestone that allows them to put on the white coat, a symbol of the authority that they have earned for the practice of medicine. This is a long tradition and signifies belonging to a group of professionals with the title medical doctor. There are lots of examples of this. The cop wears a uniform, the priest vestments. The public speaker has a uniform too. This is mine. I know, but it works for me. All of these say, I have earned the right to be here today to do this job. Other projective techniques involve objects or props, as we say in theater. The medical doctor has a stethoscope, a flashlight, and that little rubber mallet thing they use to check your reflexes. Carpenters have a bag of tools. The student has a laptop or books. Public speaker has a microphone or perhaps a clicker for slides. No slides, no slides. Character can also be a projective technique. As I've said, when actors study a character, they work to understand that character. So too for the public speaker. You are on a quest to understand your role. Actors and speakers use the role to help them to express ideas with authority. And also to take the focus off themselves. Remember, my partner is the most important person. So if I may, I'd like to go back to my story. That very famous actor is a great artist. Like many actors, I believe he uses the process of working in role to portray the characters he plays honestly and authentically. He also recognizes and accepts that he is not perfect in this process. He is real. When we work in role, we first take on the role, then we particularize it to gain understanding, and then we use projective techniques to help us to play it. As you go forward with your role as speaker, you may uncover your less than perfect self. This is not a problem, it's a gift. Our less than perfect selves are human, real. So if ever it seems like sometimes you get off the elevator on the wrong floor, Don't beat yourself up about it. Forgive yourself. Take the stairs. Thank you.
Words of a true introvert. So the next speaker is Dr. One R. Pagán. He is a professor of biology at Westchester University. Dr. Pagán is a pharmacologist, educator, and a passionate science communicator whose research uses planarium flatworms and studies neurobiology and pharmacology. He has authored more than 30 scientific chapters, book chapters, several popular science books, and regularly shares science with the public through writing, blogging, and podcasting. In his talk, Nature, Wonder, and Wonderment, we are all called to become science explainers. He reminds us that while the universe can be awe-inspiring and even a little terrifying, science and sharing it helps us better understand our place within it. So please join me in welcoming Dr. One R. Pagán.
Thank you. I am a science explainer, and I've been doing this professionally since the late 1980s. I used to be a high school science teacher. I've taught biochemistry at 2 different medical schools, and for the last 21 years and counting, I've been teaching pharmacology, biology, and astrobiology, among other courses, right here at Westchester University. It should be no surprise if I tell you that I am an unapologetic science nerd. I like anything and everything about science. I just happen to like biology a bit more. I've always known that I love science since forever. But I really understood why when I read Carl Sagan for the first time. You see, just like him, I'm in love with science, and I want to tell everybody about it, which is a good thing, because I was able to get my dream job. You see, at my job, I have 4 main expectations. I'm expected to think about science, to read about science, to practice science, and talk science. And the students have to listen to me. It's been a privilege, really. Speaking of which, I need to acknowledge 3 main sources of privilege that have allowed me to be here with you and to do what I do. I was raised in a supportive birth family who, among many other things, gave me access to books and the time to read them. More importantly, there's a family I chose to build. My wife, Lisa, my daughter, Vanessa, and my sons, Reynaldo and Andy, are an ever-present source of inspiration that wants me to become a better person, a better man, a better husband, a better dad. I couldn't imagine my life without you. I also had great scientific mentors, people who saw something in me that I didn't know I have, people who believed in me when I really didn't believe in myself, but that's a story for another time. So, speaking of mentorship, one of my favorite sources of, explaining science, it's when I train my own research students. Since 2005, I have trained close to 125 students. Of those, 37, soon to be 46, are co-authors in publications based on what we do in my lab. And they are a constant source of academic pride and joy. I love when they come back, get in touch, and share with me their adventures in life and career. I have made lifelong friendships, and colleagues. And in fact, my very first thesis student is in the audience here. She's a PhD now, you know. And if it sounds like I'm showing off, I'm totally showing off. See how nice and brown my beard was too? Well, that's another story. On the right, you see the latest picture in which I was able to get everyone. You see how difficult it is to get all of the guys together for a picture? You know, that's also a source of privilege for me because they allowed me an extra layer of science explaining, nerding out, geeking out. Surely you get the picture. But what if I told you that I've been a science explainer for way before the 1980s? Now, for that story, I need to introduce you to my dad. He was a great dad by any metric, any measure. I'd like to think that I honor his memory in the way I love and raised my 3 children, and in a certain extent, in the way I treat my students. On the left, there's the 2 of us in 1965, when I was about 1 year old. I'm the one on top. And can you believe he was 24 at the time? I can't wrap my mind around it. On the right, that picture was it was taken 40 years after 1965, the week I graduated from my Ph.D. Ever since that week, whenever my dad talked about me, he would refer to me as my little doctor. I miss that man. He supported the aspirations of all of his five children. And in my particular case, he was always bringing me science books, science magazines, and the occasional comic book too. And we would play the questions game, which is exactly what it sounds like. He would ask me questions about life, the universe, and everything, usually about the things that I read in the books that he brought me. He would listen to my explanations with his undivided attention too. Mind you, he had no way of knowing if I was right in what I was explaining. But he didn't care. He wanted to be there with me and for me. I mean, it was right there with my dad that my science communication adventure, my science explaining adventure began. This fascination didn't come out of the blue. But I want to express a couple of things about how fascinating are nature and science. There's no scientific shame at all in stating that the universe is mysterious. It is mysterious. I, for one, am very comfortable with the idea that we don't know everything that there is to know about the universe. But I do know that if we have any hope of understanding what's out there, it's going to be through science. There's no other way. Still with me? Okay. When you learn some science, it's not uncommon to acquire a sense of deep wonder and humility, because pretty soon you will realize that there's many things in the universe that are way bigger and way older than you are, and that can be pretty terrifying. Probably one way to express the majesty of the universe, it's through numbers. Did you know that our universe is about 13.8 billion years old? Billions with B as in bold. And if we cannot wrap our minds around how big that number is, let's do a thought experiment. What if I asked you to count from 1 to 1 billion. One number per second, non-stop, 24 hours a day, no rest. If we do that, we'd be here about 32 years and change. That's a big number. Since we're talking about billions, you probably know that there's 8 billion of us, people, on our planet right now. But what if I told you that in the 200,000 years where people, our kind of people, have been our kind of people, there's been about 100 billion humans who have lived and died on this planet. Think about all the stories of love and hate, of adventures and misadventures, of happiness and sadness, of which we will never, ever know anything about. There's more. What if I told you that we haven't been the only type of humans on this planet? In the same time period that I alluded to a few seconds ago, there has been at least 5 different species of humans. Probably the most famous are the Neanderthals, who were stronger than we are, were hardier than we are, their brain was bigger than ours, and they were beginning to show indications of culture, like, for example, knowledge of medicinal plants. Why did we survive and they didn't? You should know that there's DNA of those 5 different species in us right now. One more number. 40 trillion, with T as in tomato. No, this is not the tomato, this was the ball, yeah. 40 trillion, it's the typical number of cells in a grown human. And each of those have millions upon millions of subcellular components, always bouncing each other, always reacting with each other, always trying to harvest energy from the environment so we can stay alive. Our evolutionary history is hardly unique. Of the millions of species that grace this planet of ours, they have an equally rich evolutionary history and complexity. So nature, and the way to find out about nature, science, it's majestic in size, complexity, and yes, why not, beauty. So, my friendly challenge to you, my call to action. Why don't you try to become some kind of science communicator? It's easier than you think, and I'll tell you why. But first, I want to state that I'm not going to try to convince you that science is important for our society. I'd be preaching to the choir. We all know that our society is based on science and technology, right? But then, a significant fraction of the population worldwide has very little idea of what science is and how it works. And now that's terrifying. So, we need people who can communicate science effectively and correctly. And probably the best way to do that is to convey this sense of wonder and thinking about this thing is really cool, to catch their attention. How can you become a science explainer? There's the formal way, right? You can go to school, you can become a teacher, you can become a professor, and it's counterintuitive, but I'm going to tell you that that's the easy way to do it. Because when you teach a course, personal experience, students who take any of my courses either need the course or like the course. So they will be more likely to pay attention to what I have to say. Okay? So that's likelihood. The trick is to entice the proverbial layperson into this fascination for science. A person who maybe was intimidated by science and math for whatever the reason. That happened to me too. It's not uncommon. You can learn science and create, let's say, your own blog, your own podcast. You can write for magazines, your local newspaper. It's really easy to do that. But you need to learn your science correctly too. How do you do that? You can go to website sources, and that's fine. You can find anything and everything online nowadays. That's the good news and also the bad news. But my best advice in that context, read. I know how difficult it is. The collective attention span of our species is really shortened. It's happening to me. I'm sure it's happening to you. But we have to make an effort. And let's not just read science. Actually, I would argue, start with science fiction. From satellites to cell phones, to the possibility of regenerating a lost extremity, to cure cancer, teleportation, all of those things were firstly imagined in a science fiction writer's mind. And many current discoveries are inspired on science fiction. Still with me? Okay. But then you also have to figure out what you like best. And if you're like me, and I hope you're like me, you like anything and everything about science. But sadly, we don't have the time to do everything. But there's a technique for that. It's called the gossip test. That was given to us by Francis Crick, one of the co-discoverers of the DNA structure. And that's a story of how they got the data that they needed. That's another can of worms that I'm not going to open right now. But he gave us the gossip test. And it's gossip not in its negative connotation. It's not like that. It's in the context of whatever you cannot wait to tell somebody about. It would be like essentially nerdiness, geekiness. It's like, I hope you noticed that I've been saying things like, did you know? Or what if I told you? That it ignites the innate gossipness of the human mind. Okay? And that tells, well, that thing is worth knowing. I'm going to give you 3 examples from personal experience of the gossip test. My research students know, and there's a couple of you here, so thank you. They know that even if they didn't work on a particular experiment, if one of their lab mates gets some really good results, I send a mass email, and I send the graph, and I send the statistical analysis. Look what we found, okay? That's one. And they have to listen to me. Who definitely do not have to listen to me are my faculty colleagues on my floor. And yet, it's not uncommon for me to go to their office, hey, how you doing? Hey, by the way, did you see what we found? You know, this time. And you know, we are like-minded people. Okay, so the third example, boy, are you gonna love the third example. When I get a shipment of my beloved flatworms, it's not uncommon for me to go in my building with my box, and if I run into somebody, whether I know them or not, I sometimes go, would you like to see my worms? Which I admit fully, that is, if I weren't in a biology building, that would be a really weird way to start a conversation. So, my friends, you can become science communicators. Identify something that you can be passionate about, that you want to gossip about. You can do it. And if you think you can't, you're wrong. Talk to me. It boils down to this. Science communication is important, right, for the formal reasons that I mentioned before. But in addition to that, it's intellectually satisfying feeds the mind. It's aesthetically pleasing. It feeds the soul. It's really, really cool. And it's really, really fun. What do you say? Would you like to be my fellow science explainer? Thank you.
Well, we hope you've enjoyed the first 4 talks, and we've reached the halfway point. So we're going to take a quick 20-minute intermission. Feel free to head to the lobby for some refreshments and snacks, but we ask you that you please don't bring any of the food or drinks back into the theater. But yeah, we'll get things started again in about 20 minutes, so around 5:30, so you can come back in and we'll get started. So thank you very much.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back. For those I haven't met, I am Dr. Abby Gannis. I'm a chemistry professor here at Westchester University, and I'm also a proud alum from Westchester University. Yes, and I have the pleasure of guiding us through the second half of tonight's TEDx event. This year's theme explores the intersections of science, nature, art, and the human experience. And the speakers we're about to hear from each bring their own perspective on how those ideas connect in surprising and meaningful ways. So let's dive back in. Our next speaker brings together professional expertise and deeply personal experience to explore how science can shape meaningful change. Dr. Peter Doehring spent decades leading school, hospital, and university-based programs supporting individuals with autism spectrum disorder. Today, he works as an independent researcher and advocate, focusing on how public policy, community programs, and outdoor recreation can create meaningful opportunities for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. Dr. Doehring reflects on what science has and has not changed in the lives of those most profoundly affected, and how new approaches rooted in community, experience, and compassion may help expand opportunity and understanding. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Peter Doehring.
Thanks so much. Good evening. So I'm Peter Doehring. I'm a clinical and research psychologist, and also father and advocate for Margot, my 25-year-old daughter, pictured here, skiing at Mont Tremblant near Montreal, where I grew up. Now, Margot has severe to profound intellectual and developmental disabilities and associated medical conditions like partial blindness, cerebral palsy, and a history of seizures. The kind of problems that, had she been born 30 years earlier, would have left her to be institutionalized. But Margot is not a list of problems. She's my daughter. She is a charming young woman when she's happy and healthy. And she's shown remarkable resilience in the face of some of these challenges. So here's what I want to talk to you about today. I want Margot and others like her, those living with severe to profound intellectual developmental disability or autism, IDA, to live the kind of life they deserve, to be happy and healthy. And I think this is going to require real changes to our research methods and our research priorities. And I think if you hear how we and why we got on skis, you'll agree with me. So Margot's life and ours has been difficult, but it would have been a lot harder had we not discovered outdoor adventures like this kayak trip on the Brandywine River just 10 minutes from here. Now, I became a child psychologist almost 40 years ago because I believed that rigorous scientific research had the potential to benefit all of us, and especially those who were the most vulnerable. And about a decade before Margot was born, I began delivering research-based programs and services to a vulnerable population, children living with autism. And I spent the next 25 years as a clinician, an educator, a program leader, and a researcher before retiring early to take charge of Margot's care. And in the course of creating these outdoor adventures and conducting systematic reviews of research publications and research funding in autism, I realized a couple of things. First, how little research has provided concrete guidance to parents and frontline professionals to help people with autism and people with IDA to be successful in activities like these. Second, the extent to which the research community has completely ignored those living with more profound IDA. And third, the ease with which it might be possible to adapt research-based programs to make activities like these even more successful and more accessible to more people. And I saw how this might begin to help with the problem I encountered first as a professional and then as a parent. As a professional, I saw a pattern emerging in children with IDA, profound IDA, whose programs I was responsible for. Their cognitive and their behavioral challenges slowly but surely began to limit the places they could go and the activities they could do. And over time, this spiral of increasing isolation and increasing stress led families to the most painful of decisions. Should they place their child outside of the home? And while these families believed that these placements might be temporary, whether it's in a group home or a facility or otherwise, I knew from experience that many of these children would never return to live permanently with their families again. And as Margot approached adolescence, I saw the beginnings of this pattern. We had few activities we could do outside of the home. It was impossible for us to take a vacation as a family. Her behaviors became more challenging, and she seemed increasingly unhappy. And it was at this moment that I just stumbled across a specialized bike trailer that I'm using to tow her on a path by the Delaware River. It was so much fun. I thought, what would it take to kayak together, to hike together, to ride a tandem bike together, and eventually to ski together? And these activities became so important because they were the first activities that we could truly enjoy together as a family, and the first time I saw Margot being thrilled. So I began to imagine, how could research help us make these kinds of activities more successful? Now, you might ask, why wasn't this research already being done? Well, it turns out that traditional researchers interested in conditions like autism tend to get preoccupied with the questions of basic research on the causes, the cures, the characteristics, the general trajectory. They believe that somehow what we learn from the basic research will trickle down to eventually translate into better interventions, better practices in homes and schools and elsewhere. And that eventually those interventions will make their way somehow into the hands of community-based professionals and parents. But my systematic review of more than 40 years of outcome research revealed that this trickle down, this shift never occurred. Only about 3% of studies in the most recent set assessed sought to concretely improve daily life by testing interventions that could be delivered by a parent or a community-based professional in typical settings like homes and schools. So, what could work better? How about a revolution in our research priorities and our research methods that focuses directly on how parents and frontline professionals can deliver immediate improvements in health, happiness, enjoyment, and independence to people like Margot, instead of chasing endlessly causes and cures and other topics of basic science. Outdoor adventures like these, and indeed many activities of daily life, would benefit from some of these interventions. So I had outlined a roadmap to these kinds of outcomes in a 2013 book that drew from evidence-based practices I summarized in an earlier book. And this roadmap was based on 15 years of leading school and hospital programs serving hundreds of children with autism. And I realized that in this roadmap, the identification of evidence-based practices was really just the end of the beginning. That if you didn't have services to deliver these practices, and if you didn't have training, advocacy, and policy to make sure that those services got to everybody who needed them, you would never, ever translate good quality outcome research into better outcomes for people like Margot. Better outcomes start with better services, the most important element of this roadmap, like the training that Chris, Margot's adaptive ski instructor, is giving her here. I learned so much from watching Chris, so much from hearing what he learned over the years working with others like Margot. And by combining this with my knowledge of Margot's interests and abilities, and my knowledge of evidence-based practices we could adapt to the task of skiing, we gave Margot her first run down an intermediate slope here at Gore Mountain. But there are huge gaps in the research on services. And it's important to understand that in every school, every hospital, every community setting across the country, the bulk of face-to-face services are delivered by non-professional staff, people often who only have a high school diploma, and little professional training. And this is especially true for services provided to those with profound IDA and those provided to adults with IDA. We know from surveys of service providers in Pennsylvania, though, that 20% of these direct support staff positions are unfilled, and that there's annual turnover of 40 to 50%. So it doesn't matter how good your outcome research is. You can't build the capacity to translate that research into better outcomes with vacancy rates and turnover rates like these. And these vacancy rates and turnover rates create problems for us as a family. We could find no providers for services for us, so we were left as a family to recruit, train, and supervise our own direct care staff. Wouldn't it be great if we had research that identified where these service gaps were and how we might begin to close them? Now, you also can't have good services without good training. And if you can't train parents and frontline professionals in these practices, you'll never be able to offer services outside of specialized settings, and you'll never be able to scale it up to meet the needs of an entire population. And so we saw this in my efforts to ski with Margot. If I could not be trained to be her instructor, as I'm doing here, our skiing would always be restricted to hills with adaptive ski programs and always constrained by the availability and the cost of adaptive ski instructors. Now, there is an emerging field of implementation science that's very exciting, that's looking at these questions of services and training, but you actually don't have to look far to see huge gaps. So there's remarkably little research, for example, on those direct care staff I talked about earlier, right? We don't know how much training they get. We don't know whether they get any training at all. And while that's less of a problem in a school setting, where they're supervised and supported by a teacher and they have very strictly delimited range of responsibilities, for programs like ours, that creates real challenges because they're expected to work very independently with adults who can have very intense and complex needs, with virtually no training and no specialized support. So wouldn't it be great to have research that looked at the kinds of training needs of these direct support staff? Now, some of the other kinds of research is actually not that hard to do, like research on the kinds of barriers that people like Margot face every single day, barriers that create this accumulating stress that makes it hard to do any kind of activity. And what we learned skiing with Margot is that if we tackled one barrier at a time, we would slowly decrease the stress and increase the fun. So we look carefully at barriers. There's physical barriers, like is there a smooth and level run to the ski lift? There's policy barriers. Does the ski hill allow the type of specialized snow slider Margot uses? Does the ski hill allow instructors, aides to ski for free? Does the ski hill allow us to jump the long line, as you can see here? And there's sometimes relatively simple supports that can help solve these problems. You might see that there's straps, kind of bungee cords on the front of Margot's skis and her snow slider. That keeps her skis from crossing and keeps them centered and makes skiing less stressful for her. There's a strap that we fashioned that allows me to hold her up as we're approaching the lift and allows me to attach her to lift so she doesn't fall off. Falling off a lift is not the kind of outcome we're looking for. And in many of these cases, these solutions were relatively simple. It was a conversation with ski lift operators and adaptive ski instructors and a little bit of time in our workshop, and we had addressed an important barrier to skiing. And there's the tremendous financial costs. Now, there is good research documenting how caregivers responsible for somebody with autism face very significant loss in their lifetime incomes, whether because they miss the opportunity for promotion, they have to work part-time, or they have to leave the workforce altogether, as I did. But it's the societal costs that are truly staggering. So for example, in 2024, there were about 40,000 adults with IDA in Pennsylvania who are receiving what we call waiver-funded services. These waivers are funded equally by state and federal sources. Of those 40,000 individuals, 20,000 received an average of about $25,000 a year of services, but the other 20,000, they received an average of $200,000 a year in services when you combine state and federal dollars. Yet, and to put that in perspective, that cost for those 20,000 represents 4% of the entire statewide budget. That's just for Pennsylvania, just for 1 year. Yet we have virtually no research on the kinds of services that those 20,000 individuals at $200,000 a year receive, and whether we're successful in helping them achieve the outcomes that we think they deserve to achieve. And here's the thing. We have state leaders willing to work with us on solutions when we give them good information. So as we approached June of 2022, we realized that Margot was never going to recoup the education she lost to COVID. And so I started out on a campaign to see what we could do to fix that. I worked with a couple of parents beginning in March. We gathered data through public record requests and other sources. We met with two key legislators, one a leader in the House and one a leader in the Pennsylvania Senate, over the course of about 3 to 4 months. And by the end of June, we had, I think it was 3 sentences inserted into an omnibus spending bill that gave an extra year of public school, that option, to each of the 1,600 students who would otherwise graduate that June. Okay? And from our records, we think that about 1,200 students took advantage of that opportunity at a cost of about $40 million. So, a couple of parents working over 12 to 16 weeks with 2 legislators, 3 sentences, $40 million. Imagine what we could accomplish if we had researchers interested in partnering with us on these kinds of questions. Now, while the story of how we came to ski captures many of the possibilities, there's actually a solution available to almost everybody right now, and that's a routine of healthy walks in nature. Now, we worked on this routine over many years with Margot, and it remains the one activity that she can do no matter where she is, and do with family and friends and people that don't even know her that well. This particular walk on New York City's High Line, Christmas Day 2012, was in fact the first outing Margot did with her grandmother, then 85 years old, that did not involve going to a store. This is the first walk that they took together. Now, walking is an essential life skill. Its health benefits are without dispute. There are very few prerequisites. And in most cases, all you have to do is get yourself to a park with a path, and you can begin to get healthier. So one of the things that I've been working on over the past couple of years is to meet with local, county, state, national leaders to make our parks and preserves more accessible. So for example, we're developing a system that we're piloting right now, a rating system for natural trails, those with dirt and grass surfaces, that capture the kinds of difficulties that people with mobility challenges face. And if successful, this system would allow people with any kind of mobility challenge to find a trail that matches their interests, their abilities, their goals. It gives them the possibility to meet their healthcare needs with relatively little effort. And it's something that can be scaled up because we have these parks and preserves all over the country. We have the potential to unlock thousands of miles of trails for these individuals. So in the end, we don't have a science that could cure Margot, that could fix her, but we could have research that helps identify practices that could help her be happier and healthier and more engaged and independent. We could have research that helps us identify the services, training, policy, and advocacy to help us achieve these outcomes. We could have research that looks more closely at the costs associated with some of these issues. We could have all this research. We really just need researchers who are willing to rethink the work that they do, to shift their priorities and their methods. Because in the end, helping people like Margot is what science is supposed to do. And it's what Margot and others like her really deserve. Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry, I was given feedback that I needed to put the mic closer to myself. It's hard out here for short people, just to let you know. Okay, so let's give Dr. Doehring another round of applause. Thank you for sharing such a thoughtful perspective on how science, community, and lived experience can come together to expand opportunity and understanding. Our next speaker invites us to think about something we all experience every single day, whether we realize it or not. Shakespeare once wrote that all the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. And if that's true, then every day we step out into the world already wearing a kind of costume. What we choose to wear can signal identity, profession, creativity, right? Sometimes even our values. Long before we say even a single word, people are already forming impressions about who we are. Our next speaker explores exactly that idea, how clothing, costume, and appearance tell stories about us, and what those stories reveal about the roles we play in society. Constance Case is a professor of costume design and technology here at West Chester University. She has designed costumes, hair, and makeup for more than 150 theater and dance productions in both professional and academic settings. Her design philosophy centers on creating a true visual representation of character so that audiences can fully experience the story being told on stage. Please join me in welcoming Constance Case.
Thank you. You got this. Before I said a word, your mind might have made some decisions about me. Am I young or old? What's my social status or occupation? What about my temperament? Am I more jovial or serious? As a costume designer, I use clothing and fabric to tell stories, and everyday outfits can tell stories as well. What did you decide? I hope that I styled myself today in a way that would portray confidence and creativity, helping you to engage better with this presentation. Costumes create character and build personality based on what you're wearing. Sorry. How does a costume designer do this? A costume designer uses the elements and principles of design to communicate ideas to you. The elements of design include line, shape, texture, form, color. We don't have time to cover all those today, so we're just going to focus on line with a little sprinkling of color and texture thrown in for good measure. Humans have emotional reaction to line. And what is a line? A line is simply a mark on paper or anywhere that has a greater length than width. Humans' emotional reactions to line can be seen in some of these slides. Oops, hold on. For example, horizontal lines will give you a feeling of tranquility or monotony and stability. You can see in this character's costume that she's got the broad horizontal lines at the top and the bottom, indicating that she's probably not a lot of fun at parties. Vertical or upright lines indicate strength and authority, as you can see in this king in his cape. And curvy lines indicate peace and calm. And this is a beautiful representation of lines that create tranquility and calm in this character, the great grieving goddess from the play Tongue of a Bird. How a costume designer specifically does this with line and the other elements is exemplified here in this production of The Seagull. In this photo, this is Nina. She's a character in the play The Seagull by Anton Chekhov. In the beginning of the play, she's an ingenue, which is typically your female lead who is innocent and naive. Nina has hopes and dreams of becoming a successful actress. You can see all these elements working together to create this illusion. Note the simple sheer chiffon at her neck. The sleeves are soft and ruffled. The hem is a soft curving line. And of course, she's dressed in white, the color of innocence. As the play continues, we see Nina starting to change. Her neck is now open and vulnerable. The sleeves that were soft curved lines are now crimped and gathered. She's still in white, but she is beginning to change, and you can see the downward trajectory to come by the hanging drape around her neckline. Take note of the dead seagull that Nina is looking at in the play, The Seagull. By the end of the play, Nina has not realized her hopes and dreams. I mean, it is Chekhov. She is betrayed, dejected, and defeated. She even compares herself to that dead seagull. Can you see the wing imagery in the costume? The diagonal lines indicate that she's off kilter and not steady. The jagged hem of her shawl and her skirt communicate stress and tension. The added texture indicates a rougher and lower lifestyle than she wanted. And of course, she's no longer in the innocence of white. She's now in a muted gray, the color of sedation. And in case you think I made the whole thing up just to fit the picture, here's a rendering I did for that costume long before the play opened. Now that I've shown you how to more accurately analyze costumes, you can revisit old favorites in a new way. Think of a character from a play or a movie. What were they wearing? How did that support the character? Maybe you thought of Glinda the Good Witch from the movie The Wizard of Oz in her pink, glistening ball gown with the circular shapes to it. Or maybe you thought of James Bond in the classic structured tuxedo with high contrast. Can you now see how the lines of those costumes support the personality of the wearer? Aside from enhancing your theatrical experiences, how is this information useful to you? Well, you can be your own costume designer. Do you want to feel freer? Try some nice flowy fabrics. Do you want to feel empowered? How about a structured garment like a blazer or a skirt with pleats? Do you want to feel bold? Try adding some sort of a bright color to your wardrobe. The possibilities are limitless. I hope you'll take this information and tell your story.
Okay, so let's give Constance Case another round of applause, please. That was such a powerful reminder that the stories we wear can shape the way we see ourselves and the way others see us. Our next speaker invites us to shift our perspective once again, this time by looking to the natural world. For millions of years, ant colonies have thrived through systems built on cooperation, collective care, and resilience. These complex societies offer remarkable insights into how communities organize, adapt, and succeed. Dr. Manuela Ramalho, an assistant professor of biology here at Westchester University and the leader of the Ramalho Lab, where she studies host microbe interactions, ant microbiomes, and evolutionary ecology using multi-omics approaches. Originally from Brazil, and the first in her family to attend university, she is deeply committed to making science accessible and inclusive through research, teaching, and community outreach. In her talk, she draws inspiration from ant evolution to reflect on women's leadership, parenthood, and belonging in science. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Ramalho.
You're gonna do great. Thank you. Yeah, we're Brazilian, we hug, right? So that's what we do. I love ants. That's real. People know me. They know that it's real. I know that for several of you that may sound strange, but for me, for you guys, ants are just these tiny little insects that you can find in your kitchen or in the sidewalk. For me, ants are one of the most incredible animals that we have for understanding life. I study ants because they live in society like we do. So they share resources, they cooperate, they rely on one another, and that makes them an incredible system to study host microbiome interaction, social organization, and evolution. There's another thing that amazed me about ants, that across languages, countries, and continents, different cultures, everyone knows what an ant is. And that's huge for such a small insect, right? That alone tells us how incredibly successful, both ecological and evolutionary speaking, ants are. Ants have been around for about 100 million of years. They survived mass extinction. And they figured out a way to colonize almost every corner of Earth, including your kitchen, right? So their success, it is not accidental. It is definitely organized, it is social, and it is deeply female. So here's something that you may not know about ants. About 99% of all the ants that you ever see in your life walking around, those are in your kitchen, they're all females. Males do exist though, but just in a short period of the time during reproduction season. So you can find males in the spring or in the summer, depending on the species. So their role in the colony is basically sex, reproduction, and increasing diversity by doing that. After that, they're gone. Seriously, no important anymore. Sorry, husband. But that means that inside of the ant colony then, all the works are done by females. So I'm talking about defend the colony, foraging for food, expand the colony, maintain the nest, take care of the babies, the nursing. It's all done by females and led by a female, a queen and a mother. And that system, it's working for millions of years and still counting. As a woman scientist and as a mother, that parallel, it is impossible for me to ignore. And I consider myself incredibly privileged because I got to study ants and all their diversity all over the world. So I get to study them with the diversity of shapes and colors, behavior, life histories. I get to ask questions about their social organization, how their host microbe interactions happen, and how evolution happened here as well. And I get to do this as a woman in science. But here's where the story gets tricky. Even in a field that studies societies dominated by females, like in the case of the ant colonies, when we look how the scientists look like, the scientists who study them, we are telling now a different story. Like in many different fields of the STEM fields, women that study myrmecology, the study of ants, women are still underrepresented. So with that in mind, together with other females, scientists and collaborators, we want to ask a question: how the women, scientist women in the myrmecology, the study of ants, are doing in our field. So in order to do that, we look for more than 5,000 of papers for the last 30 years regarding like ants' work, ants' publication. And we focus on looking the first author of these papers and the last author. The reason is because in our field, the first author of the paper is normally a proxy for scientists in the beginning of our career. So I'm talking about our students, grad students, postdocs. Well, the last positions of those papers in our field normally sign out for the PI, the leadership in the field, right? The idea behind that lab. So, and that could be a proxy for like the senior stage of our career. So although our data was not as much surprising, was definitely very disappointed. So indeed, like we expect, women are publishing less paper, not publish less paper, are signing for less paper in the myrmecology field. But for me, the interesting part of that story is when we look to this graph here. So when we look at the data over the last 30 years. So if you look for the red line here, you're seeing that towards to the end, there is an increase of this red line, which is the first author. So even if you are seeing an increase over the last couple of years, this increase is still not significant enough compared to the average of the last 30 years. The real problem is when we look for the last authorship, the leaderships in our field. So there is no significant change, no increase for the last 30 years. I don't have more 30, right? So we need to fix that. So the problem, this data is telling me that we do have a problem of retention here. So the pipeline leaks at multiple stages. Even if a talented woman decided to enter in our field, just few of them are able to progress with their career and become the leadership in our field. And that's bad. Definitely, it's not because women are less capable. It is because the system was built without us in mind. In the same paper, in addition to show data about the problems that we have for women representation in our field, we also made several recommendations how, as a society, the study of ants, we can overcome this challenge. So we make several suggestions for funding agents, institutions, journals, editors, and we are very clear about one thing. Men matters in this conversation. Men are majority of science. So we need to count men as an ally, not a passive supporter, but a real ally that wants to change the culture with us. And several of other studies, decades of studies, have demonstrated that by increasing this diversity is not just because it's the moral good, but in fact, diverse teams produce better science. So by increasing accessibility, we improve science itself. Okay, I want to change gears here, but not really, because talking about women in science, it's really hard to separate it from another reality, which is becoming apparent in science. So it's not exclusive a challenge, like balancing professional and personal life. It is not an exclusive challenge for a scientist. Everyone already faced that, right? But scientists as a profession, man, it is hard. I'm talking about long hours. I'm talking about sometimes travel for weeks or months to go collect your ants in Amazon, right? For field work. Travel for other countries to attend conference, publish or perish. And the biology clock does not stop. So several studies have been around these topics and demonstrated how challenge become apparent in science or apparent in academia that could be. But now let me tell you about ants and how they are doing. So inside of the ant colony, there's a place that we call the nursery. So which is essentially keeping all the babies, the ant babies, the larvae, all together in the same place. Why do they do this? Well, collective care, it's more efficient. So when they put all the babies together, they actually freed some adults that we call workers in a colony. So these free adults can go work. These free adults can go foraging for food, defend the colony from predators, expand the colony, maintain the nest. So all of this that it's important for the ant colony. If you think that sounds familiar for you, it is essentially because it is. Have you heard about daycare? Right? So ants figured that out millions of years ago. Yeah, ants understood that shared care does not weaken productivity. It is strengthened. So inspired by this, together with other moms in the field of myrmecology, the study of ants, we decide to get together as a society, as a group, to ask for our colleagues, how is the challenge that we are facing has become apparent? How are we doing? How, in my case, how do I do this, right? So we invited the entire scientific community that study ants to answer a questionnaire, whether if you're scientists with kids or no kids. And we want to see how you were doing several activities that it is expected that a scientist perform. So our data was very clear in a point. So when we look for activities that does not require travel, we actually did not see difference between scientists with kids and no kids, even 5 years after the arrival of the kid. So when activities are based in their regular routine, scientists with kids and no kids, no difference. We kind of like the village is helping make that happen. So in the data that you're seeing here in this graph is numbers of publication, but we also look like numbers of proposals submitted for grants, numbers of classes taught, numbers of mentees, advisees, no difference with kids and no kids. The real problem is when we look for data, for activities that expected for scientists to travel, to leave the regular routine. For those kinds of activities, we still find difference between after 5 years of the arrival of the children between scientists with kids and no kids. And that's bad. Definitely not helping us with the retention problem here. Because let's take this graph, this conference, for example. Let's think about conference. When scientists attend conference, that's how we get to learn new techniques, learn clever and innovative way to ask questions. That's how we build collaborations, expand our network, meet future students. By excluding all the parents to attend conference, we are hurting our talent. We are losing talent here. Some societies already figured it out a way to make daycare in events or family space in events, family kids space in events. But these strategies in order to overcome and make science more accessible for parents. But in these practicals is still really happening in a short amount of field and definitely does not happen in the entire world. So when institutional supports parents, science thrives. Okay, I'm talking with you today, standing here, visible pregnant with my second child here. And you can see my first child here in this slide. Nikki is here in the audience too. And I want to be honest with you. This journey have been challenge and fun. Yep, parents are laughing, right? Yeah. So it is challenge, but I still consider myself incredibly lucky, and I have plenty of privilege. And I still have so many doubts, especially with my first pregnancy, when my career was far away to be solidated as like a grad student going for a postdoc. So I have questions like, should I not move to another country to continue my career with my baby with 4 months old? Should I find a less prestige and less competitive career? Should I slow down? Well, I am standing here today as your professor, as a scientist, a mentor, and a mother. Everything that I always dream about it. And the only reason that I get to do this is because I did not do this by myself. I had help. I have my village. So I have my family, my husband, my friends, my colleagues. I have my students. I had institutional support. People who understood that caring for the next generation, it is not a weakness. It is an investment, like in the ant colony. So they invest on me. We need more people to understand that. Ants teach us that cooperation, it is not optional. It is an evolutionary strategy. They teach us that female leadership can sustain societies for millions of years. The collective care increased success, and diversity of roles strained resilience. So maybe the lessons from the ant colony, it is not just about the insect, but maybe it's about us. What would the science look like if we truly value women? If we would truly support parents? If we would build systems that allow all talents to thrive? Well, ants already know the answer. Thank you.
I'm so proud of you. I'm proud of you too.
Okay. She's who I want to be when I grow up, by the way. I can't see, sorry. All right. So let's give Dr. Ramalho another round of applause. What a beautiful reminder that sometimes the smallest creatures can offer some of the biggest lessons about leadership, community, and resilience. Okay. Our final speaker this evening brings together two fields that might seem very different at first glance: medicine and art. Sakina Zaidi is a pre-medical student here at Westchester University who is passionate about uplifting communities and pursuing a career in medicine. Through her academic journey and personal interests, she has become interested in exploring the connections between her passions and her purpose, and how different disciplines can come together to shape the way we understand and care for others. Sakina's talk reflects on how ideas from different fields can mirror each other in unexpected ways. Please join me in welcoming Sakina Zaidi.
Thank you. I want each and every one of you to use your fingers and draw out the letter S in the air in front of you. A little weird, but bear with me. Now, do it again, but this time, imagine that the width of your stroke is equivalent to the pressure you apply. So a light feathery touch, come on guys, hands up, a light feathery touch when moving your finger up, a strong pressure when moving your finger down, and a light feathery touch when moving your finger back up again. What you just did is, in its essence, the art of calligraphy. And it's the art that I fell in love with at the age of 14 years old. When I first found out about calligraphy, I was amazed by the patterns and techniques that went into creating such beautiful handwriting. Unlike regular handwriting, calligraphy forces you to alter the pressure and movements of your hand in order to create for these beautiful designs. Drawn by the intricacy of the craft, I spent countless hours on YouTube, as one does, trying to perfect it, until eventually it kind of became like second nature. And over the past couple of years with this hobby, I've created many things, ranging from cards to food labels to even name tags. And I've really grown to love the dynamic nature of this art form. Simultaneously, in my academic life, I have grown to love and find my passion for both biology and medicine, which I argue is another art form. As biology majors, as we go deeper into the field of biology and academia, we often learn about the true intricacies that are hidden behind the systems that, when we first learned about them, seemed pretty simple. Like, what's the body made out of? Cells. They replicate and divide. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, something every biology major has heard. But with classes and countless group projects, our knowledge of the field deepens. And so with this knowledge that I've gained as a biology major and discovering my passion for medicine, I've actually come to the striking conclusion that my hobby of calligraphy, and the one that you all got to experience in the beginning, actually holds a foundational resemblance to both biology and medicine. Now, I know what you guys might be thinking. Biology and art, how could these things ever relate, let alone have anything in common? But today, I want to tell you how. And I want to do so by walking us through the unexpected parts of the human body that the patterns of calligraphy present themselves in. So, as humans, our bodies are all about movement. Whether you're a trained cross-country runner or a bit of a couch potato like me during exam season, our bodies utilize the same processes that allow us to move. Starting big with our muscles, specifically our muscle fibers, whose interactions allow us to do things like hike large mountains or swim long distances, or even write long research papers. Trust me, it's hard. But when you zoom in on the microscopic anatomy of our body, the individual cells that make up each organ system, how do these cells move and expand? How do they move molecules within themselves? The answer lies in something called the cytoskeleton, a beautiful and well-organized infrastructure that scaffolds and supports our cells. More specifically, our actin filaments, the true rock star behind the delicate movement of our cells. Behind me, you can see a picture of what this looks like in a real-life cell, with your actin highlighted in this bluish-green color, lined up alongside the periphery of the cell. Now, I don't know if this is just because I'm a science nerd, but looking at this gave me that same awestruck feeling I got when I looked at a Monet landscape for the first time. Kind of weird. But these actin filaments, they arrange and they rearrange, allowing our cells to move and shift based on the environment around them. These filaments allow for cells like these embryonic neurons with their actin highlighted in this pink color to form the first signs of a nervous system. For these macrophage and T cells of our immune system to fight off infection. For these fibroblasts to patch up wounds when we get them. And what's interesting in this dynamic nature of the cytoskeleton, the movement that it allows for, calligraphy is the same. Similar to how you have this well-organized, intricate movement of our actin filaments that allows our cells to maneuver in various different directions, you have your brushstrokes in calligraphy. Every small change in the pressure that the artist applies, the thickness of the brushstroke, and even the way that the artist wields their pen, it all contributes to this flowy nature of the letters. Every delicate change in the calligraphy process results in different curves of your brushstroke, resulting in different fonts. And what's interesting is that this artistic nature of our body that we see at this level of the cytoskeleton, it doesn't just stop here. Rather, if you zoom out just enough to see what each organ system actually consists of, it's very hard to deny that the human body is another art form. Now, as I mentioned, my hobby of calligraphy, I utilize it to make cards. A fact that my mother loves because it means that she never has to remember to buy a graduation, a wedding, or a birthday card. She kind of has like her own personal card maker at her disposal. But through making these cards, I've grown to love the precision that comes with it. Calligraphy is certainly an intricate art in and of itself, as it requires this careful precision and organization. There's a pattern to be followed, and one that you all experienced in the beginning, with the thick downstrokes and the thin upstrokes. And adding butterflies like the ones behind me allows me to add even more detail into this already intricate craft. What's interesting is that this passion for intricacy that I found in calligraphy, I also found it in my human anatomy classes, where we look at what each organ system consists of. Take, for example, our cochlea. For some background, our cochlea is a spiral-shaped organ that sits inside our ears and is home to something called the basilar membrane. This membrane is home to millions of neurons whose job is to take in the sound waves that we hear from our external environment, integrate them, and allow them to be processed by our brain. I want you all to take a second and truly take in the detail that is present within our ear. A system that seems so simple, but when you really look at it, it contains such a high degree of precision. It really does leave you awestruck. Calligraphy is the same. At first, you see this well-written handwriting, but upon closer examination, you begin to notice things like the varying brushstrokes, the intentional movement of the artist's hand, the different patterns that are present within it, all intricacies that ultimately contribute to what you see on the screen. Now, I want you all to take a moment and think about your favorite art form. For me, that's calligraphy. And by now, I hope that you all have gotten a glimpse into just how intricate this can be. But what about you? Even if you don't think you have a favorite, you most probably do. Whether it's a painting, a mural, a song, or a play. Maybe it's the architecture of a building, or even just a photograph. Whatever comes to mind, hold on to that. Why does that particular piece of art stand out? Is it because of the flow, the balance, the way that everything seems to just fit together, the repetition of the strokes or the lines? And most importantly, do you see the same patterns in your own body, the cells that make up who you are? Because science and our bodies aren't as rigid as we make them out to be. Rather, it just takes some close, detailed examination to truly witness the art that is science. And so, if you aren't able to make it to an art museum this weekend, a medical textbook might just do, because it turns out that the human body is a pretty impressive gallery. Thank you.
All right, let's give Sakina another round of applause, please. What a beautiful reminder that science and art are often two different languages telling the same human story. So I think before my closing remarks, do you want me to do it now? You want to do it now? Yes. Yes, yeah. Some shenanigans.
Only starts as an idea, but with that, I would really love to take a moment to honor someone who is the entire heart and soul of this production. We would not be here at all if not for this individual. This individual has done everything from day one, is the license holder of TEDx Westchester University, is the grant holder of the grant that has sponsored us today, and has been a believer of this process since day one and has worked tirelessly. Please join me in giving a huge round of applause to Dr. Jessica Sullivan Brown. Dr. Sullivan Brown, if you could come out for me. And also, we If you know Dr. Sullivan Brown, you know that she has a huge heart. She took this on, organizing this event, on top of being a full-time professor, on top of also conducting amazing science in her lab, and also being a mom as well. So please join me in giving her another round of applause again. And then we would also love to honor if we could get her out here. If not, please give her a congratulations when you see her out in the hallway. Dr. Sarah Levin. Are you here? All right, well, we will give these to her after, but Dr. Sarah Levin is also a reason why we are here today. Oh. Yes, both of you, please stay out here. Dr. Levin, these are for you. Dr. Levin is a professor in the Media and Culture Department here at Westchester University. Not only has she worked tirelessly throughout this production process as well, we really value her expertise, but also she is the reason why we have so many wonderful student volunteers here today for our registration and ushering. They're from the production classes who are aspiring young professionals. So please join me in giving a huge round of applause for these two wonderful individuals. We would not be here today if not for them. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Okay, before we wrap up tonight, I want to thank our speakers for sharing their ideas, their stories, and their curiosity with all of us. Throughout this evening, we've explored the intersections of science, nature, art, and the human experience, and how each of these ways of understanding the world help us see things a little differently. We've heard how science can expand opportunity, how art can shape the stories we tell, how nature can inspire new ways of thinking, and how our shared human experiences connect all of these ideas together. If tonight has sparked a new question, a new connection, or even just a new perspective, then it has done exactly what gatherings like this are meant to do. So as you leave tonight, I hope you carry a little of that curiosity with you and keep enjoying the spaces where ideas meet. Thank you for joining us at TEDx Westchester University. Have a wonderful evening.